The information presented in this video, titled Decoding Car Model Types, a guide for American buyers, is intended strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. It does not constitute professional financial, legal, or automotive engineering advice. Buying a vehicle is a significant financial commitment that involves complex contracts, insurance requirements, and long-term maintenance obligations. We strongly urge every viewer to conduct their own due diligence, consult with certified financial advisors, and perform independent inspections before committing to any vehicle purchase or financing agreement. The automotive market is subject to rapid fluctuations in pricing, availability, and regulatory changes. Therefore, the historical trends and case studies mentioned herein may not reflect future market performance. The American driveway is currently the site of a multi-billion-dollar identity crisis, and most consumers are paying a massive hidden tax for their lack of technical knowledge. Right now, the average new car payment in the United States has climbed to staggering levels, often exceeding $1,000 per month. Yet, if you ask the average person standing on a dealership lot to explain the physical structural difference between a crossover and an SUV, they will likely point to the ride height and stop there. This fundamental misunderstanding is exactly what manufacturers rely on to drive profit margins. We have entered an era where a brand can take the chassis of a humble commuter sedan, lift it 3 inches, add plastic cladding around the wheel wells, and rebrand it as an adventure vehicle to justify a 20% price premium. You are potentially losing thousands of dollars in fuel efficiency, insurance premiums, and unnecessary depreciation simply because you are buying a marketing label instead of a vehicle architecture. This is the high-stakes reality of the modern car market. If you do not understand the DNA of the machine you are signing for, you are not a buyer, you are a target. Think about the sheer confusion currently permeating the market. We see the Ford Mustang, a nameplate synonymous with two-door muscle cars for over 60 years, now affixed to a 4-door electric crossover. We see trucks that are no longer used for hauling lumber but function as leather-lined luxury cocoons for suburban commutes. Historical trends show that as American tastes shifted toward larger vehicles, the lines between segments blurred into a chaotic soup of terminology. Is it a compact? Is it a subcompact? Is it a mid-size? The answers to these questions aren't just for trivia. They dictate your safety in a collision, your ability to fit into a standard parking garage, and your potential outcomes when it comes time to trade that vehicle in 5 years down the road. Most buyers are walking into showrooms armed with nothing but a preferred color and a monthly payment target, leaving them vulnerable to classifications that favor the dealer's bottom line over the driver's actual needs. This video is the first part of a comprehensive 10-part masterclass designed to strip away the marketing jargon and give you the mechanical and financial literacy required to navigate the 2026 automotive landscape. We are going to solve the problem of classification paralysis. By the end of this deep dive, you will possess the ability to look past the badge and the chrome to see exactly what a vehicle is designed to do. We will provide you with a step-by-step framework to identify which segment actually fits your lifestyle versus which one you have been conditioned to want. We are moving beyond the surface-level reviews and into the engineering and economic realities of every major model type available in the US today. To understand where we are going, we have to look at the massive shift in how cars are built. For decades, the distinction was simple: cars were cars and trucks were trucks. Today, that distinction has been obliterated by the rise of the unibody platform. In the past, if you wanted a large vehicle, it was built using body-on-frame construction, where a heavy steel frame supported the engine and drivetrain, and the body was dropped on top. This is how the classic SUVs like the Chevrolet Tahoe or the Ford Expedition are still built. However, the vast majority of what people call SUVs today are actually crossovers or CUVs. These use unibody construction, meaning the frame and the body are a single integrated unit, much like a standard sedan. Why does this matter to your wallet? A unibody vehicle is lighter and handles more like a car, but it generally lacks the heavy-duty towing capacity and off-road durability of a body-on-frame vehicle. If you buy a rugged-looking crossover thinking you can tow a heavy horse trailer just because it looks like a truck, you are courting a mechanical disaster. Case studies of consumer behavior in the mid-2020s show a distinct trend. Buyers are consistently overbuying capability. We see individuals in urban environments purchasing heavy-duty pickups with dual rear wheels for grocery runs, or families buying 3-row SUVs with off-road suspension packages that will never see a dirt road. This overspecification results in what we call the utility penalty. You are paying for the reinforced steel, the heavy-duty cooling systems, and the increased aerodynamic drag every single time you pull up to a charging station or a gas pump. In this guide, we are going to break down the technical specifications of each class, from the nimble subcompacts that are making a comeback in congested cities to the massive full-size luxury liners that dominate the interstate. We will also explore the legal and regulatory reasons why certain model types even exist. Many people don't realize that the reason we have so many crossovers is partly due to CAFE standards, or corporate average fuel economy regulations. Manufacturers found that by classifying a vehicle as a light truck rather than a passenger car, they could adhere to more lenient fuel efficiency targets. This led to a deliberate push to move consumers out of station wagons and sedans and into crossovers. You have been nudged into these larger segments not just by your own preferences, but by a complex web of federal regulations and manufacturing incentives. The promise of this series is total clarity. We are going to examine the sedan, the hatchback, the wagon, the crossover, the SUV, the pickup truck, the minivan, and the emerging class of dedicated EV platforms. We will analyze each one through the lens of total cost of ownership, including insurance brackets which vary wildly based on vehicle classification. We will look at safety data, explaining why a heavier vehicle isn't always a safer one for your specific driving environment. We will also dive into the psychological triggers used in car advertisements, showing you how brands use imagery of rugged mountains and open plains to sell vehicles that will spend 99% of their lives in stop-and-go traffic. This is not a video about which car is the prettiest or which one has the fastest 0 to 60 time. This is a masterclass in automotive architecture and market strategy. By the time we finish all 10 parts, you will be more informed than the vast majority of salespeople on the floor. You will understand the structural advantages of a long wheelbase, the cargo loading benefits of a liftback versus a trunk, and the financial implications of choosing a luxury brand crossover over a mass-market SUV that shares the exact same platform. This is about taking control of the second largest purchase of your life. We are starting at the very foundation, defining the terms and setting the stage, because in the 2026 car market, knowledge isn't just power, it is the only thing keeping your bank account from being drained by a clever nameplate in a high-seating position. Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the mechanics of the American automotive dream, where we decode the DNA of every model type to find the one that truly serves your needs, your budget, and your future. To grasp the 2026 market, we must first dissect the foundational architecture of the passenger car, starting with the three-box design known as the sedan. While many critics have claimed the sedan is a dying breed, historical trends suggest a different story. In a world of rising energy costs and a push for maximum electric range, the physics of a sedan offer potential outcomes that a taller vehicle simply cannot match. Imagine a consumer named Marcus in suburban Atlanta. Marcus spends 80 minutes a day on the interstate. He is currently looking at two vehicles built on the exact same electric platform, a sleek midsize sedan and a popular compact crossover. From an engineering standpoint, the sedan possesses a lower center of gravity and a significantly lower drag coefficient. This is not just a performance metric, it is a safety and efficiency metric. A lower center of gravity reduces the risk of a rollover during emergency maneuvers, a statistical reality that often reflects in lower insurance premiums for sedan owners compared to their top-heavy counterparts. The three-box design of the sedan refers to the distinct structural compartments for the engine, the passengers, and the cargo. This separation is vital for NVH, which stands for noise, vibration, and harshness. Because the trunk is a sealed compartment, the road noise generated by the rear tires and the exhaust system is physically isolated from the cabin. In 2026, as vehicles become quieter due to electrification, the intrusion of tire roar becomes more noticeable. The sedan architecture inherently solves this problem better than any other model type. Furthermore, the structural shear wall located behind the rear seats of most sedans provides a level of torsional rigidity that enhances handling precision. When Marcus takes a corner at highway speeds, the sedan remains composed because the body does not flex as much as a vehicle with a large, open rear hatch. Moving to the two-box design, we find the hatchback. This segment has seen a massive resurgence in 2026 as urban density in cities like Austin and Seattle increases. The hatchback eliminates the third box, extending the passenger cabin over the rear wheels and ending with a vertical or near-vertical rear door. For a buyer like Sarah, a freelance videographer in Denver, the hatchback is a tool of efficiency. While a sedan might have a larger total volume in the trunk, the hatchback offers vertical utility. Sarah can fold the rear seats flat and slide in a mountain bike or large lighting crates that would never fit through the narrow aperture of a sedan trunk. The trade-off is the loss of that noise isolation. In a hatchback, the rear wheel wells are inside the cabin. Every pebble that hits the inner fender and every hum from the rear motor is audible. Case studies from the past 5 years show that as manufacturers transitioned to electric vehicles, the hatchback became the default silhouette for entry-level models. This is due to the packaging requirements of battery arrays. By using a hatchback design, engineers can raise the floor slightly to accommodate batteries while maintaining a compact exterior footprint. This allows for easier parking in crowded American city centers while providing interior room that rivals mid-size cars from a decade ago. However, the hatchback often suffers from an aerodynamic penalty at high speeds. The flat rear end creates a zone of low-pressure air that acts like a vacuum, pulling back on the car. In the context of 2026 battery technology, this can result in a 5 to 10% reduction in highway range compared to a streamlined sedan of the same weight. Then there is the station wagon, often referred to as the forbidden fruit of the American automotive market. Historically, the wagon was the king of the American suburbs until it was unseated by the minivan in the 80s and the SUV in the 90s. In 2026, the wagon exists in a strange high-end niche. A wagon is essentially a sedan that has had its roofline extended all the way to the rear bumper. It offers the handling and efficiency of a sedan with the cargo capacity of a large crossover. For the sophisticated buyer, the wagon represents the ultimate compromise. It avoids the lift tax of an SUV. When we talk about the lift tax, we are referring to the increased cost of tires, the higher aerodynamic drag, and the heavier suspension components required to make a tall SUV handle safely. A wagon stays low to the ground, meaning it uses less energy and costs less to maintain over a 5-year period. Consider the case of a family in Vermont. They need all-wheel drive and enough room for a golden retriever and skiing gear. They could buy a full-size SUV, but they would be dealing with a vehicle that weighs 6,000 pounds and returns poor efficiency. By choosing a ruggedized wagon, they get a vehicle that is 2,000 pounds lighter, stops in a shorter distance, and has a lower step in height for the dog and the children. Despite these advantages, historical trends show that American buyers often shun the wagon label due to a lingering social stigma from the wood-paneled era of the 1970s. Manufacturers have noticed this and now frequently market wagons as crossovers by simply adding 1 inch of suspension lift and some black plastic trim around the wheels. This allows them to charge a premium for what is, under the skin, a station wagon. Understanding these 3 body styles is the first step in avoiding the trap of overbuying. Step by step, you must evaluate your daily usage. If 90% of your driving is solo commuting, the sedan is your most fiscally responsible choice. If you are an active individual who frequently hauls bulky items but lives in a city with tight parking, the hatchback is your primary candidate. If you have a family and require maximum space but refuse to sacrifice the driving dynamics of a car, you must look at the rare but highly effective station wagon. The financial potential outcomes of making the right choice here are significant. Over a 60-month ownership cycle, the difference in fuel or electricity costs between a sedan and a similarly sized crossover can exceed $4,000. When you factor in the typically lower insurance premiums for sedans and wagons, that total savings can grow even larger. However, we are seeing a massive shift in how these traditional shapes are being merged. In 2026, the lines are blurring faster than ever. We are seeing fastback designs that look like sedans but open like hatchbacks, and wagons that are taller than some SUVs. This leads us to a critical junction in our masterclass. While the sedan, hatchback, and wagon form the historical core of the market, they are being aggressively crowded out by a category that barely existed 40 years ago, but now accounts for more than half of all U.S. vehicle sales. This leads to a high-stakes question. Why are Americans willing to pay thousands of dollars more for a vehicle that is essentially a lifted hatchback? Is the high seating position a genuine safety advantage? Or is it a psychological trick that makes you feel more secure while actually increasing your risk of certain types of accidents? In the next part, we are going to dive into the most dominant force in the automotive world, the crossover. We will break down exactly how the industry convinced an entire nation to abandon the car for a platform that is more expensive to build, more expensive to own, and often less practical than the models we just discussed. We will expose the hidden mechanics of the crossover boom and show you the specific engineering trade-offs you are making every time you choose a CUV over a traditional car. You will see why the term crossover is the most successful marketing lie in history, and how you can spot the difference between a legitimate utility vehicle and a masquerading economy car before you sign the paperwork. The crossover, or CUV, is the most successful sleight of hand in the history of the global industrial complex. To understand the 2026 market, you have to understand that the crossover is not a category defined by what it is, but rather by what it is hiding. In technical terms, a crossover is a unibody vehicle that uses a car-based platform but features an elevated ride height and a two-box design reminiscent of a traditional SUV. But that definition is far too sterile for the reality of the showroom floor. Imagine a buyer named David in suburban Phoenix. David is looking at a popular midsize crossover because he wants a vehicle that feels rugged, safe, and capable of weekend adventures in the Tonto National Forest. He sees the black plastic cladding around the wheel wells, the roof rails, and the aggressive, upright grille. To David, this vehicle looks like a mountain goat. In reality, the chassis beneath that sheet metal is nearly identical to the midsize sedan he is trading in. This is where the marketing meets the mechanics. Manufacturers realized decades ago that they could charge a premium for the same amount of high-strength steel and glass simply by increasing the H-point. The H-point or hip point is the theoretical location of a passenger's hips when seated. By raising the H-point, designers give drivers like David that commanding view of the road. This psychological sense of superiority and safety is the primary driver of the crossover boom. However, this height comes with a significant engineering penalty. When you raise the body of a car, you raise its center of gravity. Historical trends in automotive safety data show that while modern electronic stability control has mitigated the risk of rollovers compared to the early 2000s, the physics of a high center of gravity vehicle still dictate potential outcomes in high-speed avoidance maneuvers. David feels safer because he is sitting higher, but his vehicle is inherently less stable than a lower-slung sedan. Let us look at the financial architecture of this choice in 2026. Because crossovers are taller and boxier, they have a much larger frontal area than a sedan. This leads to a higher coefficient of drag. In the current era of high-output electric vehicles and hybrid systems, aerodynamics are the single most important factor in highway range and efficiency. If David chooses the crossover over the sedan variant, he is potentially losing 15 to 20% of his range at 70 miles per hour due to wind resistance alone. This is a recurring cost that David will pay for every mile he drives over the next 5 to 10 years. Furthermore, crossovers almost always come with larger diameter wheels and tires. A standard sedan might run on 17 or 18-inch tires, while its crossover cousin demands 19 or 20-inch rubber. When it comes time for replacement, David will find that the tire tax for his crossover adds an extra $400 to $600 to his maintenance bill for a set of 4. The crossover lie extends into the realm of capability. Most consumers in the United States believe that the presence of all-wheel drive, or AWD, makes their crossover an off-road vehicle. This is a dangerous misconception. Case studies of mechanical failure in modern CUVs often point to people pushing these car-based systems beyond their design limits. A crossover's AWD system is typically a front-biased, on-demand system designed for traction on wet or snowy pavement. It lacks a 2-speed transfer case, it lacks low-range gearing, and it lacks the heavy-duty cooling systems required for sustained low-speed crawling. If David takes his crossover onto a technical trail, he risks overheating the multi-plate clutch pack that manages the power distribution to the rear wheels. Step by step, he is subjecting a commuter car's suspension to stresses it was never intended to handle. The suspension bushings, the strut towers, and the CV axles in a crossover are sized for the highway, not for the trail. Step 1 in decoding a crossover is to look at the engine orientation. In the vast majority of crossovers, the engine is mounted transversely, meaning it sits sideways across the engine bay. This is the hallmark of a front-wheel drive car platform. It is a space-saving measure that prioritizes passenger room over heavy-duty drivetrain durability. Step 2 is to look at the towing capacity. Most compact and mid-size crossovers are rated for 1,500 to 3,500 pounds. This is barely enough for a small utility trailer or a pair of jet skis. If you attempt to tow a significant load, you aren't just taxing the engine, you are taxing the unibody frame itself. Unlike a truck, which has a steel ladder frame to absorb the stress of a trailer, a crossover uses its entire body as the structure. Over time, heavy towing in a unibody vehicle can lead to body flex, interior rattles, and even door misalignment. The genius of the crossover is that it provides the illusion of utility without the manufacturing costs of a true truck. By 2026, manufacturers have perfected the art of the subcompact crossover. These are vehicles like the ones Sarah might consider in a tight city environment. They are essentially tall hatchbacks. They offer no more interior volume than a standard hatchback, but because they are 3 inches higher, they can be marketed as an entry-level SUV. This allows the manufacturer to increase the MSRP by several $1,000s, while keeping the production costs nearly identical. For Sarah, the potential outcomes are a vehicle that is harder to park, more expensive to insure due to its classification, and less efficient than the hatchback it replaced. We must also consider the insurance implications of the crossover segment. Insurance companies in the U.S. categorize vehicles based on repair costs and liability risks. Because crossovers are often taller and heavier than cars, they can cause more damage in a collision with a smaller vehicle. Additionally, the complex lighting and sensor arrays integrated into the high-mounted bumpers of modern CUVs make even minor fender benders incredibly expensive to repair. In 2026, a simple front-end tap that would have cost $1,500 a decade ago can now easily exceed $5,000 in parts and recalibration for the ADAS systems. These costs are passed directly to the consumer in the form of higher monthly premiums. The crossover is the ultimate compromise. It tries to be everything to everyone and, in doing so, masters very little. It is not as efficient as a sedan, not as nimble as a hatchback, and not as capable as a true SUV. Yet, its dominance is unquestionable. It has become the default choice for the American family because it represents a lifestyle aspiration. It says that you could go camping, you could tow a boat, and you could navigate a blizzard even if you never actually do. But what happens when you actually need that capability? What if you are the buyer who truly needs to haul 6,000 pounds of equipment or navigate a washed-out logging road in the Pacific Northwest? This is where the marketing facade of the crossover falls apart, and where a different breed of vehicle takes over. The transition from the car-based crossover to the truck-based SUV is the most misunderstood jump in the entire automotive market. People often use the terms interchangeably, but doing so is a multi-$1,000 mistake. In the next part, we are going to strip away the sheet metal and look at the heavy-duty reality of the body-on-frame SUV. We will explore why these prehistoric giants are still thriving in 2026 and why, for a certain type of buyer, they are the only logical choice. We will reveal the hidden world of ladder frames, solid axles, and low-range transfer cases. You will learn the specific signs that tell you a vehicle is a real SUV, and why buying one when you don't need it is the fastest way to turn your bank account into a pile of depreciating iron. We are moving from the suburban masquerade of the crossover into the heavy-duty world of the true SUV, and the differences are more than just skin deep. To understand the true SUV, you must stop looking at the exterior styling and start looking at the skeleton. In 2026, the automotive industry has masterfully blurred these lines, but the physics of a ladder frame remain undeniable. Imagine a character named Robert in Houston, Texas. Robert is a general contractor who frequently needs to tow a dual-axle trailer loaded with heavy equipment, often exceeding 7,500 pounds. Robert is currently standing between a high-end crossover and a traditional full-size SUV. To the untrained eye, both vehicles look equally massive and capable. They both have leather interiors, high-tech screens, and 3 rows of seating. However, if Robert makes his choice based on the interior comforts alone, he is ignoring the fundamental difference in their structural integrity and the mechanical potential outcomes of his purchase. The true SUV is built using body-on-frame construction. This is a method that dates back to the very dawn of the automobile, but it has been refined for 2026 with advanced high-strength steels and hydroformed rails. In this setup, a heavy-duty steel frame, literally looking like a ladder, serves as the foundation. The engine, transmission, and suspension are all bolted directly to this frame. The body of the vehicle is then placed on top of it, separated by thick rubber or hydraulic mounts. This separation is the key to why a true SUV can handle stresses that would literally twist a crossover into junk. Let us look at the mechanical implications for Robert. If he chooses the unibody crossover, the entire shell of the car is the frame. When he hooks up that 7,500-pound trailer and hits a pothole on the interstate, that shock is absorbed by the same structure that holds his doors and windows in place. Over time, historical trends show that unibody vehicles subjected to heavy towing develop structural fatigue. You might notice doors that no longer click shut perfectly or a persistent rattle in the dashboard that will not go away. In Robert's case, the true SUV uses its ladder frame to isolate those stresses. The frame takes the punishment of the trailer, allowing the body to stay rigid and aligned. This is why vehicles like the Chevrolet Tahoe, the Ford Expedition, and the Toyota Sequoia are the workhorses of the American highway. They are built to be beaten. Another critical component that separates the real from the pretenders is the transfer case. In Part 3, we discussed how crossovers use on-demand AWD systems. A true SUV almost always features a dedicated transfer case with a low-range gear set. This is a mechanical gearbox that sits behind the transmission. When you shift into 4 low, you are engaging a set of gears that multiply the torque coming from the engine. This is not for driving fast. It is for generating the massive force needed to pull a boat up a slick ramp or to crawl through deep, muddy ruts. Imagine if Robert finds himself at a boat launch in 2026. The ramp is covered in algae and the incline is steep. A crossover's AWD system would rely on its computer to detect will slip and then apply the brakes or shift power around. In many cases, the transmission would struggle because it lacks the mechanical advantage of low-range gearing. The potential outcome is a stalled vehicle or a burnt-out clutch. In a true SUV, Robert engages 4 low, effectively doubling his torque at the wheels. The vehicle moves the load with ease because the physics are in its favor. However, there is a heavy financial and comfort-based tax for this capability. This is the SUV paradox. Because a ladder frame is essentially a separate heavy object beneath the car, it adds significant weight. A full-size SUV in 2026 often tips the scales at over 5,500 pounds, and if it is an electric variant, that number can skyrocket to 8,000 pounds or more. This weight requires heavy-duty suspension, massive brakes, and tires with high load ratings. Step by step, this increases the total cost of ownership. Your brake pads will wear out faster because they are fighting more mass. Your tires will be significantly more expensive. And then there is the ride quality. Unsprung weight is a term every buyer should know. It refers to the weight of the components not supported by the suspension, like the wheels, tires, and heavy solid axles found on many traditional SUVs. When you hit a bump, that heavy mass wants to keep moving up. This is why a true SUV often feels jittery or bouncy on a broken road compared to the smooth car-like ride of a crossover. Manufacturers have tried to solve this in 2026 with air suspension and magnetic ride control, but you can only mask the laws of physics for so long. From a financial perspective, the true SUV offers a unique case study in depreciation and tax strategy. In the United States, Section 179 of the tax code has historically allowed business owners like Robert to deduct the purchase price of vehicles with a GVWR, or gross vehicle weight rating, over 6,000 pounds. This is a major reason why you see so many luxury SUVs in suburban driveways that never see a dirt road. They are not just vehicles, they are tax instruments. However, the potential outcomes for your daily budget are harsh. Even with 2026 hybrid technology, a body-on-frame SUV will almost always be less efficient than a unibody equivalent. You are carrying around 1,000 pounds of steel frame every time you drive to pick up a gallon of milk. The true SUV is also where we see the most aggressive off-road hardware. We are talking about locking differentials, which mechanically lock 2 wheels on the same axle together so they turn at the exact same speed, regardless of traction. We are talking about disconnecting sway bars that allow the wheels to move up and down further to keep contact with uneven ground. These are tools of extreme utility. If your life involves the high-stakes environments of the Rockies or the Appalachian Trails, these features are not luxuries. They are necessities. But we have to talk about the 2026 reality of the market. The true SUV is becoming a luxury icon. As fuel and energy prices fluctuate, the cost to operate these machines makes them a status symbol, as much as a utility tool. We see manufacturers adding more and more chrome, more screens, and more leather to vehicles that were originally designed for ranchers and forestry workers. This has created a secondary market of buyers who want the look of the rugged SUV, but are horrified by the actual maintenance costs and the driving dynamics of a truck-based platform. For decades, a true SUV was defined by a solid rear axle. This was a single heavy steel tube connecting the rear wheels. It was incredibly durable for towing, but it meant that if the left wheel hit a bump, the right wheel felt it too. In 2026, most full-size SUVs have moved to independent rear suspension, or IRS. This allows each rear wheel to move independently, significantly improving ride quality and creating a deeper footwell for third-row passengers. However, purists argue that this compromises the ultimate durability found in vehicles like the Jeep Wrangler or the Toyota Land Cruiser, which often retain solid axles for extreme off-road articulation. The true SUV is a specialist. It is designed for high-stress, high-load, and high-difficulty environments. If your daily life is a case study in heavy lifting, it is your best friend. If your life is a case study in commuting, it is an expensive anchor. Identifying which side of that line you fall on is the difference between a smart purchase and a financial burden that will haunt your monthly budget for years. As we move forward, the distinction between a heavy-duty SUV and a pickup truck is becoming thinner every day. Why are people choosing a vehicle with an open bed over a closed-in SUV? Is it about utility? Or is it about the specific cultural identity that the pickup truck provides in 2026? We are about to break down the payload, the towing, and the sheer audacity of the modern American truck. Keep watching because Part 5 is where we tackle the giants of the road. The pickup truck is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the American road. But in 2026, the segment has branched into distinct subspecies that require a surgical level of understanding to navigate. If you think a truck is just a truck, you are likely about to overspend by $15,000 on capability you will never use, or worse, by a vehicle that is legally and mechanically incapable of performing the tasks you require. Imagine a character named Jackson in rural Montana. Jackson operates a small landscaping business, but also needs a vehicle that can transport his family of 4 to the lake on weekends. Jackson is currently looking at a shiny, top-tier full-size pickup. He sees a towing capacity of 13,000 pounds on the spec sheet and assumes he is covered for any load he might encounter. Jackson is about to learn that the most important number on a truck is not the towing capacity, but the payload capacity, and the difference between the two is where most American buyers make their most expensive mistake. In 2026, we categorize trucks into 4 distinct tiers: compact, mid-size, full-size, half-ton, and heavy-duty 3/4 and 1 ton. To decode these, we must look at the structural engineering. While we discuss body-on-frame in the context of SUVs, the pickup truck takes this further by separating the cab from the bed. This is not just for ease of repair. It is a fundamental requirement for structural flex. When a truck like Jackson's carries a heavy load over uneven terrain, the frame must be allowed to twist slightly to keep the wheels in contact with the ground. If the body were a single piece, the stress would shatter the glass and buckle the door pillars. This is the first step in identifying a real truck. Look for the gap between the passenger compartment and the cargo area. Let us look at the compact tier, a segment that has exploded in popularity by 2026 with models like the Ford Maverick and Hyundai Santa Cruz. These are the outliers because they are actually unibody vehicles, built on the same foundations as crossovers. For a buyer in a dense urban environment like Philadelphia or Chicago, these are the ultimate tools. They offer the utility of an open bed for hauling mulch or a mountain bike without the massive footprint and abysmal fuel economy of a traditional truck. Historical trends show that these vehicles are the modern equivalent of the small 1980s Japanese pickups. However, the potential outcomes of treating these like heavy-duty workhorses are grim. Their payload is often limited to 1,500 pounds, and their towing is capped at 4,000 or 5,000. If Jackson tried to run his landscaping business with one of these, he would find the suspension bottoming out and the transmission overheating within a single season of hauling heavy stone. Moving up to mid-size trucks like the Toyota Tacoma or Chevrolet Colorado, we see the return of the ladder frame. These are the sweet spot for the American off-road enthusiast. In 2026, these trucks have grown in size to nearly match what full-size trucks were 20 years ago. They offer genuine four-wheel drive systems with low-range transfer cases and are narrow enough to fit on tight trails. For a buyer who prioritizes adventure over maximum hauling, the mid-size segment is the logical choice. But here is the data point that surprises most buyers. The fuel efficiency of a mid-size truck in 2026 is often nearly identical to that of a full-size truck. Because they are less aerodynamic and use smaller engines that have to work harder, you are not necessarily saving money at the pump by going smaller. You are choosing maneuverability over raw power. Now we enter the heart of the American market. The full-size or half-ton pickup, such as the Ford F-150, Ram 1500, or Chevrolet Silverado. In 2026, these are no longer just work tools, they are luxury vehicles that happen to have a bed. This is where we must address the payload trap that Jackson almost fell into. Jackson saw a towing rating of 13,000 pounds. However, payload is the total weight the truck can carry, including the passengers, the fuel, the gear in the bed, and the tongue weight of the trailer. A typical luxury trim full-size truck might only have a payload capacity of 1,600 pounds. If Jackson puts 4 large adults in the cab, 800 pounds, and has a trailer that weighs 10,000 pounds, the tongue weight, the downward force on the hitch, is usually 10% of the trailer weight or 1,000 pounds. Jackson is already at 1,800 pounds, meaning he is 200 pounds over the legal and mechanical limit of his truck before he even puts a single shovel in the bed. This is how transmissions are destroyed and why insurance companies may deny claims in the event of an accident. For those who truly need to move the world, we have the heavy-duty, HD segment. These are the 2500 and 3500 series trucks. These are not just bigger. They are built with entirely different components. The frames are thicker, the axles are massive, and the engines are often industrial-grade turbodiesels capable of producing over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. In 2026, the potential outcomes for an HD truck owner are vastly different from a half-ton owner. These trucks feature exhaust brakes to help slow down heavy loads on mountain grades, and cooling systems designed to run at wide-open throttle for hours. Case studies of long-term ownership show that while an HD truck is more expensive to buy and maintain, it will outlast a half-ton truck by hundreds of thousands of miles if used for constant heavy towing. However, if you drive an HD truck as a daily commuter in a city, you are subjecting yourself to a punishing ride and a turning radius that makes a simple U-turn a multi-point maneuver. We cannot discuss 2026 without the electric truck revolution. Vehicles like the Rivian R1T, the Ford F-150 Lightning, and the Silverado EV have changed the performance narrative. These trucks offer instantaneous torque that can out-accelerate a sports car while carrying a full load. For a contractor who works within a 50-mile radius and can charge overnight, the economic potential outcomes are highly favorable. The cost per mile is a fraction of a gas or diesel truck. But the masterclass detail you must know is the towing range penalty. Historical trends and real-world testing in 2026 confirm that when towing a large, boxy trailer, an electric truck will lose 50% or more of its rated range. If you are Jackson and you need to tow that boat 300 miles to the lake, an electric truck might turn a 4-hour trip into an 8-hour ordeal of charging stops. The pickup truck in 2026 is a study in specialization. You must look at the yellow sticker inside the driver's door, the tire and loading information placard. That number is the truth regardless of what the brochure says. You must decide if you are buying a lifestyle accessory, an off-road toy, or a vocational tool. The American truck is a masterpiece of engineering, but it is also a financial minefield for the uninformed. But there is one segment we have ignored. A segment that offers more interior volume than an SUV, better entry and exit than a truck, and more practical utility than almost anything else on the road. It is the most mocked, yet most mathematically superior vehicle type for the American family. As we pivot from the rugged audacity of the truck, we must look at the masters of packaging and efficiency. In the next part, we are going to talk about the vehicle that everyone says they hate but every engineer knows is the smartest purchase you can make. We are diving into the world of the minivan and the full-size van. Prepare to see why the soccer mom stigma is a mask for the most versatile architecture ever designed, and why in 2026 the van is making a massive high-tech comeback that might just change your mind about what you actually need in your driveway. The minivan is the most unfairly maligned masterpiece of automotive engineering in the United States. To understand why it remains the objective king of family transportation in 2026, you must ignore every marketing campaign that tells you that you need an off-road capable SUV for a suburban commute. Imagine a character named Chloe in Columbus, Ohio. Chloe has 3 children under the age of 10 and a golden retriever. She is currently torn between a high-end 3-row crossover and a modern hybrid minivan. The crossover looks adventurous and rugged, but the minivan is built with a singular, uncompromising focus on human logistics. If Chloe chooses the crossover, she is choosing a vehicle that is inherently compromised by its need to look like it can climb a mountain. If she chooses the minivan, she is choosing the most efficient box ever designed for moving people and their belongings. The first technical advantage Chloe will encounter is the floor height. Because minivans are built on car-based platforms and do not require the ground clearance of an SUV, the step in height is significantly lower. In 2026, as vehicles have grown larger, the climb into the third row of a full-size SUV has become a physical challenge for children and the elderly. In a minivan, you simply step in. This is a crucial data point for long-term ownership. Ease of entry and exit reduces physical wear on the interior materials and the passengers themselves. Furthermore, the sliding door is the greatest invention in the history of crowded American parking lots. A sliding door requires zero clearance to open fully, allowing Chloe to load her children in a tight Costco parking space without the risk of denting the car next to her. This is a potential outcome that no SUV, regardless of its price tag, can offer. Let us look at the interior architecture. In 2026, the Toyota Sienna and Chrysler Pacifica have perfected the art of the flat floor. Because there is no need for a massive driveshaft tunnel or a heavy-duty rear differential, the floor of a minivan is low and level from the front seats to the back bumper. This allows for what engineers call walk-through capability. Chloe can move from the driver's seat to the third row without exiting the vehicle, a lifesaver during a rainy Ohio winter. Historical trends show that while three-row SUVs claim to seat 7 or 8 people, the third row is often a cramped space with a high floor that forces passengers into a knees-to-chest seating position. In a minivan, the third row is a legitimate seating area with enough legroom for adults. Case studies in cargo management reveal the hidden superiority of the van. When the third row of a crossover is in use, the remaining cargo space is often negligible, sometimes barely enough for a few bags of groceries. A minivan, however, features a deep cargo well behind the third row. This is because the rear suspension is designed to stay out of the way of the load floor. Even with 8 people on board, Chloe can fit a full-size stroller and several suitcases in the rear. When it comes time to move large items, the step-by-step process of folding or removing the seats in a minivan turns it into a high-volume cargo hauler that rivals some commercial vans. The stow-and-go seating system in certain models is a mechanical marvel, allowing the entire second and third rows to disappear into the floor in seconds, creating a perfectly flat loading surface for 4x8-foot sheets of plywood. From an efficiency standpoint, the 2026 minivan is a case study in aerodynamic optimization. While a full-size SUV fights the wind with a massive upright grille, the minivan uses a more sloped aerodynamic front end. Combined with modern hybrid and plug-in hybrid powertrains, the potential outcomes for your fuel budget are staggering. A hybrid minivan can easily achieve over 35 miles per gallon in combined driving, a figure that most large SUVs cannot touch without full electrification. For a family like Chloe's, this can result in thousands of dollars in savings over the vehicle's lifespan. Now, let us transition to the world of the full-size van. This segment has undergone a radical transformation by 2026. Imagine a character named Mark in Portland, Oregon. Mark is a freelance electrician who also spends his weekends exploring the Pacific Northwest. He is looking at a Ford Transit high roof. Unlike the minivan, which is built for families, the full-size van is built for volume and modularity. In 2026, these vehicles have largely replaced the traditional box truck for small businesses. The move from body-on-frame to unibody construction in vans like the Transit and the Ram ProMaster has allowed for a much lower load floor, which is a critical safety factor for workers who are constantly stepping in and out of their vehicles. Mark's interest in the high-roof van is driven by the van life movement, which has reached a professional level of sophistication in 2026. These vans offer over 6 feet of internal standing room. Mark can build a mobile workshop on one side and a sleeping area on the other. This level of vertical utility is impossible in any other vehicle type. Step by step, the industry has responded by offering factory-backed adventure packages, including all-wheel drive systems and upgraded suspensions. However, the potential outcomes for driving a full-size van are different from any other car. These are high-profile vehicles that are extremely sensitive to crosswinds. Driving a high-roof van on a windy interstate requires constant attention and a different set of driving skills than a standard passenger car. In 2026, we are also seeing the rapid electrification of the full-size van. Companies like Rivian, BrightDrop, and Ford are deploying electric vans that are perfect for last-mile delivery. For Mark, an electric van could be a game-changer if his daily route is consistent. The lack of an internal combustion engine allows for even more interior space and a lower center of gravity, which improves the handling of these top-heavy machines. However, the weight of the battery packs in a full-size electric van is a significant engineering challenge. These vehicles often have a very high gross vehicle weight rating, which may require specific tire ratings and maintenance schedules that differ from traditional light-duty trucks. The van, whether it is the family-oriented minivan or the work-oriented full-size van, represents the ultimate triumph of function over form. It is a vehicle type that asks you to put aside your ego and look at the mathematical reality of your life. If you have more than 2 children, or if your business requires you to move large, fragile items in a climate-controlled environment, there is no substitute for a van. The data is clear. For every dollar spent, a van provides more interior volume, better accessibility, and higher efficiency than a comparable SUV. Yet, despite all these advantages, there is a segment of the market that wants the exact opposite of a van. They don't want utility. They want emotion. They don't want a flat floor. They want a cockpit that wraps around them. They don't want to step in, they want to drop down. We are talking about the dreamers, the weekend warriors, and the purists. As we move from the pragmatic world of the van, we are about to enter the high-stakes, high-adrenaline world of the sports car and the performance coupe. In the next part, we are going to break down why people still pay six figures for vehicles that can't carry a stroller or a sheet of plywood, and how the 2026 performance market is redefining what it means to actually drive. We will explore the difference between a grand tourer and a track-focused weapon, and why the most expensive car you can buy might also be the least practical. Get ready for Part 7, where we trade sliding doors for paddle shifters. The sports car is the ultimate act of automotive defiance. In a world where every manufacturer is obsessed with maximizing cargo volume and ground clearance, the sports car is a machine that purposefully sacrifices every metric of utility to maximize a single sensation: the connection between the driver and the asphalt. In 2026, the sports car market has bifurcated into two distinct philosophies: the high-tech, digitally enhanced performance vehicle, and the analog, purist-focused throwback. To navigate this, we must look past the 0 to 60 times and analyze the very geometry of these machines. Imagine a character named Leo in Los Angeles. Leo has spent a decade driving sensible crossovers, but he is finally in a position to buy his dream weekend car. He is currently looking at two very different vehicles: a mid-engine exotic and a front-engine grand tourer. Leo is about to discover the physics of the polar moment of inertia. This is a concept that every performance buyer in 2026 needs to understand. In a mid-engine car, the heaviest component, the engine, is placed between the axles, typically right behind the driver's head. This concentrates the mass in the center of the vehicle. Think of it like a figure skater pulling their arms in during a spin. This allows the car to change direction with incredible speed and minimal resistance. Historical trends show that for track-focused driving, the mid-engine layout offers potential outcomes that a front-engine car simply cannot match in terms of lateral grip and turn-in response. However, the potential outcomes for Leo's daily comfort are a different story. In a mid-engine car, there is often no trunk, only a small front-loading compartment or frunk. The cabin is loud because the mechanical heart of the car is inches from his ears. Contrast this with the Grand Tourer or GT. These are vehicles like the Lexus LC or certain variants of the Porsche 911 and BMW 8 Series. A GT is designed for the cross-country sprint, high speeds over long distances. In 2026, the GT remains the pinnacle of automotive balance. The engine is in the front, but often pushed far back toward the firewall to achieve a 50-50 weight distribution. This layout provides a more stable, predictable handling characteristic that is less punishing for a driver like Leo. The GT has a real trunk and a cabin lined with high-end materials and sound deadening. Step by step, Leo must evaluate if he wants a car that is a scalpel for the track or a private jet for the highway. We must also talk about the 2026 performance EV reality. Cars like the Lucid Air Sapphire or the high-performance variants of the Porsche Taycan have rewritten the rules of acceleration. In an internal combustion engine, torque, the force that pushes you into your seat, builds as the engine RPM increases. In an EV, full torque is available at 0 RPM. This results in acceleration that can be physically painful for the uninitiated. However, the weight of the battery pack remains the sports car's greatest enemy. A high-performance EV in 2026 can easily weigh 5,000 pounds. While the low center of gravity makes them stable, you cannot hide 5,000 pounds when trying to stop for a sharp corner. Case studies of tire wear on performance EVs show that owners are replacing high-performance rubber every 5,000 to 8,000 miles. This is a significant maintenance tax that many buyers overlook in the excitement of the test drive. Speaking of maintenance, the sports car market is a minefield of specialized components. Let us look at the cost of carbon ceramic brakes. In 2026, these are often a $10,000 option on high-end performance cars. They offer incredible stopping power and will never fade, even after a full day of track use. However, if Leo never takes his car to a track, he is paying for a technology that is actually worse for street use. Carbon ceramic brakes require heat to work effectively. When they are cold, such as on a morning commute, they can be squeaky and less responsive than traditional steel brakes. Furthermore, if a single stone chip damages a carbon ceramic rotor, the replacement cost can exceed $4,000 per wheel. This is why historical trends in the enthusiast community often show buyers specifically looking for cars with steel brakes for street-only use. Aerodynamics in 2026 have moved beyond simple wings and spoilers. We are now in the era of active aero. Imagine Leo is driving his new performance coupe at 70 miles per hour. Underneath the car, hidden flaps are moving to direct air toward the brakes for cooling. At the rear, the wing is adjusting its angle of attack every millisecond to provide either maximum downforce for a corner or minimum drag for a straightaway. Some high-end models even use the air moving through the bodywork to create a vacuum effect, literally sucking the car onto the road. While this technology is a marvel of engineering, it adds layers of complexity and potential failure points. Step by step, as these cars age, the cost of repairing active aerodynamic actuators will become a significant factor in their long-term value retention. From a financial perspective, the sports car is a study in high-stakes depreciation. Unlike a pickup truck or a popular crossover, which tend to have predictable resale values based on mileage and condition, the sports car market is driven by rarity and desirability. A limited production model might appreciate in value, while a mass-produced luxury coupe could lose 50% of its MSRP in the first 3 years. Case studies of the 2026 market show that the most sustainable potential outcomes for value retention are found in cars that offer a unique mechanical experience. Specifically, cars that still offer a manual transmission or a high-revving naturally aspirated engine. As we move closer to total electrification, these analog machines are becoming blue-chip assets. Then there is the insurance. Leo needs to be aware that insurance companies do not just look at the price of the car. They look at the risk profile of the platform. A mid-engine car is often more expensive to insure because even a minor rear-end collision can damage the engine and the structural subframe, leading to a total loss. Furthermore, the specialized tires required for these cars, often labeled as R-compound or track day tires, are designed for maximum grip in dry conditions. In a rainstorm, these tires can be dangerous due to their lack of deep grooves for water evacuation. If Leo lives in a climate with frequent rain, he must factor in the cost of a second set of wheels and tires for inclement weather. The sports car is not a rational purchase. It is a purchase made with the heart, but it must be governed by the head. It is about understanding the difference between the car you want to be seen in and the car you actually want to drive at 6 in the morning on a deserted canyon road. It is about recognizing that every millisecond of performance gain on a spec sheet usually comes at the cost of a decibel of interior noise or an inch of legroom. But what if you want that performance, that raw, visceral power, but you don't want the delicate complexity of a European exotic? What if you want the American version of speed, the kind that prioritizes brute force, straight-line dominance, and a specific type of cultural heritage? We have been talking about precision and balance, but now it is time to talk about the icons of the American asphalt. In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of the muscle car and the pony car. We will explore how these legends have evolved for 2026, the battle between V8 Thunder and Electric Lightning, and why the most famous names in car history are currently undergoing their most radical transformation ever. We are moving from the surgical precision of the sports car to the heavy-hitting power of the muscle car. Stay tuned for Part 8, because the horsepower wars are just getting started. The muscle car is not just a vehicle type. It is a specific American subculture defined by a very particular set of engineering priorities. While the sports cars we discussed in Part 7 are designed for the finesse of a road course, the muscle car was born on the drag strips and interstates of the 1960s. In 2026, this segment is undergoing its most radical transformation since the oil crisis of 1973. To navigate this, you must understand the distinction between a pony car and a true muscle car, a line that has blurred significantly in the modern era. Imagine a character named Tyler in Nashville, Tennessee. Tyler grew up watching his father work on a 1969 big block V8, and now in 2026, Tyler is looking to buy his first high-performance American coupe. He is faced with the choice that would have been unthinkable a decade ago: a high-output twin-turbocharged inline-six, a high-revving naturally aspirated V8, or a massive 800-volt electric drivetrain. To decode Tyler's options, we first have to define the architecture. Historically, a pony car is a compact, affordable, and stylish coupe with a focus on sportiness. Think the Ford Mustang or the Chevrolet Camaro. A muscle car, by contrast, is traditionally a midsize or full-size sedan or coupe that has been stuffed with the largest engine available in the manufacturer's inventory. Think the Dodge Charger or the older Pontiac GTO. In 2026, the primary survivor of the muscle car philosophy is the new Dodge Charger, which has consolidated these ideas into a single platform that can house both internal combustion and electric power. This is a case study in modular engineering. Tyler's first consideration is the powertrain. If he looks at the 2026 Dodge Charger Daytona, he is looking at an electric vehicle designed to mimic the visceral experience of an old-school V8. This is achieved through a system known as the Fretonic chambered exhaust. This is not just a speaker. It is a literal pipe and transducer system that moves air to create a physical vibration and sound profile that matches the throttle input. This is a crucial data point for Tyler. In 2026, the industry is using physics to maintain the emotional connection to the car, even when the pistons are gone. The potential outcomes for Tyler's driving experience are a vehicle that delivers 670 horsepower instantly, but still provides the auditory feedback he craves. However, if Tyler is a purist, he is looking at the 2026 Ford Mustang. The Mustang remains the last of the V8 holdouts in the pony car segment. We have to look at the engineering of the Coyote 5.0-liter V8. In 2026, this engine uses a dual-intake, dual-throttle body setup to breathe more efficiently, allowing it to produce 500 horsepower without the need for a turbocharger. This is a high-revving machine that requires the driver to work the gears to find the power. Historical trends suggest that these naturally aspirated V8s will be the most highly sought-after vehicles on the secondary market in 10 to 15 years, as they represent the end of a century-long era of mechanical engineering. Step by step, Tyler needs to evaluate the suspension and tire setup of these machines. Muscle cars and pony cars use a staggered tire setup. This means the rear tires are wider than the front tires. Why? Because these are rear-wheel drive machines that prioritize launch traction. In 2026, we see tires like the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S or the Pirelli P0 Corsa coming standard on high-performance trims. These tires are made of a very soft compound that provides incredible grip, but wears out rapidly. If Tyler uses his car for daily commuting and occasional spirited driving, he is looking at a tire replacement bill every 12 to 15,000 miles. Furthermore, he cannot rotate these tires from front to back because of their different sizes, which effectively doubles his long-term maintenance costs compared to a standard sedan. Then there is the concept of the widebody. In 2026, you will see many muscle cars with massive fender flares. This is not just for aesthetics. A wider body allows for wider axles and even larger tires, which are necessary to put 600 or 700 horsepower down to the ground. This also increases the track width of the car, which improves stability in corners. However, for a buyer like Tyler, the widebody adds a significant price premium and makes the car much harder to maneuver in tight city streets or narrow garages. It is a classic trade-off: maximum performance versus daily driver practicality. We must also discuss the technology of the modern muscle car gearbox. In 2026, the manual transmission has become a luxury item. While most cars have moved to lightning-fast 10-speed automatics or single-speed EV reductions, the manual is kept alive for the engagement it provides. If Tyler chooses the manual, he is accepting a slower 0 to 60 time in exchange for total control. Conversely, the 10-speed automatic used in the Mustang and the electronic shifts in the Charger are designed for maximum acceleration. They feature line lock and launch control. Line lock is a technical feature that locks the front brakes while leaving the rear wheels free to spin, allowing the driver to warm up the tires in a burnout. While this is a hallmark of muscle car culture, Tyler needs to know that using these features can have potential outcomes for his warranty coverage, if not done according to the manufacturer's specific guidelines. From a financial perspective, the 2026 muscle car is a high-stakes investment. Insurance for these vehicles is notoriously expensive in the United States, especially for younger drivers. Insurance companies use historical trends to calculate risk, and muscle cars are statistically more likely to be involved in high-speed incidents or theft. Tyler must factor in a monthly insurance premium that could be 2 to 3 times higher than that of a crossover. Furthermore, the fuel economy of a V8, or the energy consumption of a high-performance EV muscle car, is significantly higher than a standard commuter car. You are paying a performance tax at every refueling or charging station. In 2026, we also see the rise of the six-pack variants. This refers to the new Hurricane twin-turbo inline-six engines that are replacing the Hemi V8s in the Dodge lineup. These engines are a marvel of 2026 engineering, using 2 small turbochargers to provide a flat torque curve that feels more like an electric motor than a traditional gas engine. For a buyer who wants the power of a V8 but the efficiency of a modern engine, the inline-six is the logical choice. It is smoother and more balanced than a V8, but it lacks the iconic rumble that has defined the segment for 60 years. The muscle car in 2026 is a bridge between two worlds. It is a vehicle that celebrates the raw power of the past while embracing the digital precision of the future. Whether it is a Mustang GT, a Charger Daytona, or a future-leaning electric coupe. These cars are designed for the driver who views the road as a stage. They are machines of emotion, not logic. But as we move away from these icons of the open road, we have to look at the vehicles that are actually taking over the streets. We have talked about the cars that are designed for speed and the cars designed for families, but what about the vehicles that are designed for absolutely everything? In 2026, a new category of vehicle is emerging that combines the luxury of a sedan, the space of a wagon, and the ground clearance of an SUV into a single high-tech package. We are talking about the luxury adventure vehicles and the flagship electric cruisers. In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of luxury and ultra-luxury model types. We will explore how the definition of a premium car has changed from wood trim and leather to software-defined experiences and autonomous driving capabilities. Get ready for Part 9 because we are moving from the burnout to the boardroom. The luxury vehicle in 2026 has transitioned from a physical status symbol into a software-defined experience. To truly decode this segment, you have to realize that the old metrics of luxury, the thickness of the leather and the quantity of the wood trim, have been replaced by the speed of the processor and the resolution of the LiDAR sensors. Imagine a character named Elena in San Francisco. Elena is a venture capital executive who views her vehicle not as a means of transport, but as a mobile sanctuary and an extension of her digital life. She is currently evaluating two flagship models, a traditional European executive sedan and a cutting-edge American luxury electric vehicle. Both are priced north of $120,000, but the engineering philosophies behind them are worlds apart. Elena's first encounter with 2026 luxury is the concept of the executive lounge. In the traditional sedan, the focus is on the rear seat. We are talking about 31-inch theater screens that drop from the headliner, reclining seats with hot stone massage functions, and vacuum-sealed doors that isolate the cabin from the chaos of the city. Historical trends show that for decades, this was the peak of the market. However, in 2026, the potential outcomes for Elena's productivity are dictated by the vehicle's connectivity. This is a software-defined vehicle, or SDV. Every component, from the air suspension to the ambient lighting, is controlled by a central high-performance computer. This allows the manufacturer to push over-the-air updates that can actually change how the car drives while Elena is asleep. If the engineering team finds a way to optimize the battery thermal management, Elena wakes up to an extra 15 miles of range. This is the new luxury, a vehicle that improves over time rather than just depreciating. Step by step, we must analyze the chassis technology that makes these vehicles feel like they are floating. In 2026, we have moved beyond simple air springs. We are now seeing 48-volt active roll stabilization and predictive suspension. Elena's car uses a stereo camera and LiDAR to scan the road's surface hundreds of times per second. If the car detects a pothole 50 feet ahead, it preloads the suspension for that specific wheel, effectively pulling the wheel up and over the bump. The result is a ride quality that defies physics. Furthermore, we must talk about rear-wheel steering. In the past, this was a niche performance feature. In 2026, it is a luxury necessity. These flagship sedans are often over 17 feet long, which would traditionally make them a nightmare to park in a tight urban garage. With rear-wheel steering, the back wheels can turn up to 10 degrees in the opposite direction of the front wheels, giving Elena's massive sedan the turning radius of a compact hatchback. But the most high-stakes shift in 2026 luxury is the transition to autonomous driving capabilities. We are moving from Level 2, which is simple lane keeping and adaptive cruise control, into Level 3 and Level 4 systems. Case studies of the latest 2026 systems show that in specific conditions, such as geofenced highways, Elena can actually take her eyes off the road and her hands off the wheel to conduct a video conference. This is made possible by a suite of sensors that includes multiple LiDAR units, long-range radar, and high-resolution cameras. For Elena, the luxury isn't the speed of the car. It is the gift of time. However, this technology comes with a specific maintenance tax. If Elena's windshield gets a stone chip, she cannot just go to a standard glass shop. The cameras behind that glass must be recalibrated to a millimeter of accuracy. A simple windshield replacement in 2026 on a flagship vehicle can cost upwards of $3,000 because of the sensor integration. Then we have the luxury adventure segment. This is where we see the fusion of the ruggedness we discussed in Part 4 with the refinement of a boardroom. Vehicles like the 2026 Range Rover or the Rivian R1S have created a new model type, the ultra-premium off-roader. For Elena, this vehicle offers a different psychological potential outcome. It says she is capable of escaping the city, even if she only ever uses the all-wheel drive system to navigate a rainy mall parking lot. These vehicles feature sophisticated air suspension that can raise the car by 5 inches for waterfording and then lower it by 3 inches for easy entry. They use sustainable, high-tech textiles instead of leather, reflecting the 2026 trend toward eco-conscious luxury. Let us look at the financial architecture of the 2026 luxury market. Historical trends in the U.S. show that high-end luxury vehicles suffer from some of the steepest depreciation curves in the industry. This is known as the tech obsolescence trap. Because these cars are so dependent on their software and sensor arrays, a 3-year-old luxury car can feel ancient compared to a new model with the latest processor. For Elena, the potential outcomes of a 60-month lease are much more favorable than outright ownership. By the time the warranty expires, the cost of maintaining the complex air suspension and the autonomous sensors can become a significant financial burden. Case studies of 2020's luxury car ownership show that once these vehicles hit the second-hand market, their value is heavily dictated by whether their software suites are still supported by the manufacturer. We also have to discuss the ultra-luxury tier, the realm of Rolls-Royce and Bentley. In 2026, these brands have fully embraced electrification. The Rolls-Royce Spectre is a prime example. In an ultra-luxury car, silence is the ultimate goal, and an electric motor is inherently quieter than any internal combustion engine. These vehicles are no longer about 0 to 60 times, they are about waftability. This is a technical term used to describe the effortless, linear acceleration that doesn't disturb the passengers. In 2026, these cars are hand-built masterpieces where the digital interfaces are hidden behind analog clocks and physical switches to provide a timeless feel. This is the countertrend to the screen-heavy cabins of mainstream luxury. For the American buyer in 2026, choosing a luxury vehicle is about deciding where you want to live on the spectrum of technology. Do you want a vehicle that is a rolling computer, constantly updating and evolving? Or do you want a vehicle that is a handcrafted sanctuary designed to isolate you from the digital world? Elena must also consider the insurance implications. These vehicles are categorized as high risk not because of their speed, but because of their repair complexity. A minor side impact that would be a simple body shop fix on a sedan can be a $50,000 nightmare on a flagship EV because of the structural battery pack and the integrated sensors. The 2026 luxury market is a playground of engineering marvels, but it requires a high level of literacy to avoid the pitfalls of rapid depreciation and extreme maintenance costs. It is the pinnacle of what the automotive industry can achieve, representing the intersection of aerospace technology, high-end architecture, and Silicon Valley software. But even with all the luxury, technology, and power we have discussed across these 9 parts, there is one final critical question that every American buyer must answer. How do you take all this information, the chassis types, the towing capacities, the aerodynamic penalties, and the depreciation curves, and actually make a decision? How do you cut through the noise of the dealership and the glitz of the marketing to find the one vehicle that is mathematically and emotionally right for you? In the final part of our masterclass, we are going to synthesize everything. We are going to give you the ultimate buyer's checklist for 2026. We will reveal the one model type that is currently the best-kept secret in the US market, and we will show you how to future-proof your purchase against the massive shifts coming in the next 5 years. Get ready for Part 10, the final verdict. We are bringing it all home. The 2026 automotive market is not a place for the impulsive or the uninformed. It is a complex ecosystem where every technical specification carries a long-term financial consequence. To bring this masterclass home, we must look at the convergence of every category we have discussed and apply a cold mathematical lens to the final decision. Imagine a character named James in Charlotte, North Carolina. James is the quintessential 2026 American buyer. He has a 30-mile round-trip commute, 2 children in car seats, and a passion for coastal fishing trips that requires towing a 3,000-pound boat twice a month. James is currently being pulled in 3 directions: a full-size electric pickup, a 3-row luxury crossover, and the vehicle type that is currently the best-kept secret in the United States, the high-range plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or PHEV. To help James and you make the final verdict, we must first address the concept of the life cycle cost matrix. In 2026, the purchase price of a vehicle is merely the entry fee. The true cost is dictated by 3 pillars: energy volatility, software-driven depreciation, and the mechanical complexity tax. Historical trends in the mid-2020s have shown that buyers who ignored these pillars found themselves underwater on their loans within 36 months. Step by step, James must evaluate his energy footprint. If he chooses the full-size electric truck, he is looking at a high upfront cost but a significantly lower cost per mile for his daily commute. However, as we discussed in Part 5, the potential outcomes for his coastal trips are complicated. Towing that boat will slash his range by 40%, potentially turning a 3-hour drive into a 5-hour logistical challenge of finding high-speed chargers that can accommodate a trailer. This brings us to the 2026 secret weapon, the P. While the pure EV gets the headlines, the high-range pitch EV is the pragmatic masterpiece of the current year. These vehicles feature a battery large enough for 50 to 60 miles of pure electric driving, covering James's entire daily commute, but retain a highly efficient internal combustion engine for those fishing trips. The engineering behind a 2026 pitch EV is a marvel of integration. It uses a planetary gear set or a sophisticated dual motor system to blend the power sources seamlessly. For James, the potential outcomes are a vehicle that functions as an EV 90% of the time, but offers the unlimited range of a gas car for his hobbies. This isn't just a compromise. It is a surgical tool for the American infrastructure of 2026. Next, we must tackle the software-driven depreciation trap. In the past, a car's value was based on its mileage and physical condition. In 2026, value is increasingly tied to the vehicle's hardware revision. Much like a smartphone, a vehicle with an older processor or a slower data modem will depreciate faster than one with the latest silicon. James needs to look at the vehicle's compute architecture. Is the car a software-defined vehicle that receives weekly updates? Or is it a legacy platform that will be obsolete the moment it leaves the lot? Case studies of 2024 and 2025 models show that legacy platforms are losing value at nearly double the rate of SDVs. If James signs a 72-month loan on a legacy platform, he is potentially courting a financial disaster where the vehicle is worth less than the loan balance for the entire duration of the contract. We also have to revisit the mechanical complexity tax. As we move through the segments, from the simple sedan to the complex luxury SUV, we saw a steady increase in the number of systems that can fail. James needs to look at the specific 2026 technologies under the hood. For example, many midsize crossovers now use high compression, turbocharged 4-cylinder engines to replace larger V6s. While this improves fuel efficiency, these engines operate under much higher thermal and mechanical stress. Historical trends suggest that these downsized, highly stressed engines require more meticulous maintenance, particularly regarding oil quality and cooling system integrity. If James plans to keep his vehicle for 10 years, he must factor in the potential for higher long-term repair costs compared to a more traditional, naturally aspirated powertrain. Now, let us provide the ultimate 2026 buyer's checklist. This is the synthesis of everything we have learned. Before James or you signs a single document, you must answer 5 high-stakes questions. First, what is the true payload versus towing requirement? James needs to look at that yellow sticker we mentioned in Part 5. If his boat is 3,000 pounds, but his family and gear add another 1,200 pounds to the vehicle, a compact crossover is a dangerous and illegal choice. He must move into a midsize SUV or a truck to maintain a safety margin. Second, what is the aerodynamic drag coefficient? In an era of expensive energy, a vehicle with a high frontal area is a recurring expense. James should prioritize a vehicle with active grille shutters and a streamlined silhouette to maximize his highway range. Third, is the vehicle an ACS native? By 2026, the North American charging standard has become the dominant connector for EVs and PHEVs. Buying a vehicle with an older CCS port is like buying a computer with a proprietary charging cable. It is a logistical headache that will hurt resale value. Fourth, what is the ADAS risk score? Advanced driver assistance systems are great for safety, but their repair cost is staggering. James must check if the sensors are located in vulnerable areas like the bumper or the windshield. A vehicle that integrates its sensors into more protected areas will have a more favorable insurance profile. Fifth, what is the V2X capability? In 2026, a car is no longer just a car. It is a backup battery for your home. Vehicles with vehicle-to-home or vehicle-to-grid technology can provide power during an outage. For James in North Carolina, where storms can disrupt the grid, this feature adds a level of utility that a standard vehicle cannot match. As we look toward the next 5 years, the automotive landscape will continue to shift. We are seeing the return of the sport wagon in electric form, the ultimate low-drag, high-utility vehicle. We are seeing the rise of subscription-based features, or you might have to pay a monthly fee to use your heated seats or your autonomous driving mode. This is the new reality of the 2026 market. You are no longer just buying hardware. You are entering into a long-term service agreement with the manufacturer. James, after reviewing the data, decides on a mid-size PHEV SUV. It gives him the electric commute he wants, the towing capacity he needs for his boat, and a software platform that will stay relevant for the next decade. He avoided the lifestyle trap of the heavy-duty truck and the luxury trap of the overtouched flagship sedan. He made a decision based on engineering and economic reality. The American dream has always been tied to the freedom of the road, but in 2026, that freedom is protected by knowledge. You now have the masterclass foundation to see through the marketing, decode the engineering, and identify the specific model type that serves your unique life. You are no longer at the mercy of the dealership. You are the most informed person in the room. But even with the perfect car, there is one final hurdle. A car is only as good as the deal you get and the way you protect your investment. While we have decoded the machine, the world of automotive finance and long-term protection is its own high-stakes game. How do you ensure that your 2026 masterpiece doesn't become a 2030 liability? The journey of the buyer never truly ends, and the next level of this masterclass is where we dive into the hidden world of the paperwork itself. Are you ready to see what happens after you pick the car? Stay tuned, because the true cost of ownership is just beginning to reveal itself.